Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for April 28th, 2023. Let me begin with an apology because yesterday some of you noticed that what was posted as the daily update was a repost of the one from the day before on the ghost of Brzezinski and how Zbignie's ghost is shaping U.S. policy and has been since the late 1970s. Instead, yesterday's update was on the continuity of the banking crisis, going back to 1971 through the 80s, the deregulation, privatization, the takedown of the savings and loans, the bubble economy, 2008, and so on. That was posted late in the afternoon. You may have missed it, but it's now available. I'm sorry, occasionally these kinds of technical snafus happen. Since I'm here in Germany, my team putting it up is in the United States. But I think what you'll find is that both stories are extremely important in understanding why we're headed toward a possible World War III and a depression collapse at the same time. And today I'm going to take a look at why it is you don't know about that. You don't know about these interconnections. Now, the responsibility of the LaRouche movement is to understand the historical continuity and present that so that you can see both what the enemies of the humanity are engaged in, how they've been engaged in it over time, and what their weaknesses are and how we can defeat them. Now, that's the subject for today. I received very few questions from people today. So I'll take one question, which is a sort of overall question, which can provide a preview of what's coming up. The question is basically, how can we overcome the effect of the media and big tech with its lies, its censorship, how it demoralizes people and makes people who want to fight it pessimistic? You know, I often get these questions. How can I convince my father or mother or brother or sister? My family doesn't believe me. My friends don't believe me because they're all addicted to the big media, big tech. Well, we've been taking this on for years. These are the people who slandered LaRouche for years and attacked us and try to dismiss what we're saying as, quote, conspiracy theory, unquote. Well, tomorrow on the weekly Manhattan Project program, which is 2 p.m. Eastern Time, you can get it through the LaRouche Organization online website, I'm going to cover what I call the Disinformation Industrial Complex, or DIC for short. This is something that's real, and we've been looking at it through work of people such as Mike Robinson from the UK column. I've written about it. We've had publication in Executive Intelligence Review on it. But I want to pull this together as a whole to give people a very real sense of how the corporate cartels of finance, of the so-called military-industrial complex, of big pharma, of raw material cartels, how they use the media to cover for their actions and convince people that if you think there's something wrong here, you're just mistaken, you're the victim of conspiracy theories, and so on. Now, I'm going to use 4 recent case studies to show how the corporate cartels carry out this disinformation operation. What they say is that what we do is disinformation, when in fact, they are the ones spreading disinformation. And you can see from these 4 cases how that is. And many of you know aspects of this, but presented as a whole, it becomes really quite a devastating expose of how they intend to continue to manipulate populations to think, as Bertrand Russell once said, that you can be convinced that snow is black if it's repeated often enough. So the first case study is the Seymour Hersh revelation that it was Joe Biden and the Biden administration that organized the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. This came out on February 8th. It's a very excellent, thorough article, which was attempted to be rebutted in a really clumsy way by the New York Times and some German publications. But in the meantime, they suppressed the article. There was no public inquiry, and then you had this phony counter story that came out of Germany and the New York Times. So that's one example of a case study. Secondly, there's the Pentagon leak. Now, there's so many things that are suspicious about this. How did a 21-year-old National Guardsman, which is part-time, how did he get access to this material? How did the Defense Department not know it was getting out there? But in the meantime, there's very little commentary about what the actual leaks showed. In other words, those responsible for the lies that were exposed in these leaks are not being held to account, just as those who were responsible for the crimes committed that were exposed by Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, that those criminals were never held to account. And instead, Julian Assange is being kept under terrible circumstances in a dungeon in the United Kingdom awaiting extradition for his judicial murder in the United States. So the treatment of the Pentagon leak, the most recent Pentagon leak, is the same kind of thing. You blame the person who leaked it. You spend all the investigative efforts. In fact, it was the press, the New York Times, and this phony operation from Britain called Bellingcat, which outed the person who allegedly was responsible for the leaks. So that's a second story. The Twitter files. Now, this is actually quite complex, but the files were turned over to a team headed by Matt Taibbi, Schellenberg, and others, who did an excellent job going through literally thousands and thousands of pages of documents to pull out the evidence that the U.S. intelligence and security agencies and the Democratic Party and the Republican Party put pressure on Twitter to suppress the truth. And in one case in particular that's very important is the suppression of the New York Post story from October of 2020, right before the election, about the Hunter Biden laptop. And that brings us to the fourth case study, which is the Mike Morell story, Morell being the former acting director of the CIA, who admitted under oath that his drafting of the letter, which called the Hunter Biden laptop story an example of textbook Russian disinformation, he admitted that he was inspired to write the letter by a conversation with none other than Tony Blinken, now Secretary of State, but at the time an advisor to the Biden campaign. So in a sense, we have Russiagate all over again, where it was the Clinton campaign working with MI6, working with GCHQ from the United Kingdom, working with the CIA under John Brennan, the FBI under Comey, Clapper, and others, who concocted the whole Russiagate story. Do you realize that means since 2016, the U.S. relationship with Russia, probably the most important second power in the world militarily, possibly first, the whole relationship with Russia has been shaped by continuous lies and suppression of truth. That's what we're dealing with when we talk about the disinformation industrial complex. And so tomorrow at 2 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m., on the Manhattan Project weekly program, I'll be presenting at least an outline of these cases and what this means about how you're being manipulated. Now, all these stories expose an intricate web of deceit that includes the fact that, or which demonstrates that outside of a handful of people like Seymour Hersh, people like Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mate, the Gray Zone grouping, and ourselves, the Schiller Institute and the LaRouche Organization, there's no investigative journalism. And those who are doing investigative journalism are attacked as conspiracy theorists. So when you look at this interrelationship between intelligence agencies, media, and corrupt political operatives, what do you find? They're defending the military-industrial complex, the war machine, as a disinformation industrial complex. And this is what adds to the danger that this could trigger World War III, as well as the collapse of the unipolar order and the financial system that they're protecting. So I encourage you to watch our program tomorrow. Study the documents that we keep posting on the LaRoucheOrganization.com website, including my updates, because I've been covering this in real time, day by day by day. Now, let me just encourage you also to click on the link for the intervention done by my colleague Jose Vega, who intervened on a group of editors who were presenting lies and more lies, similar to this, what's in this book behind me, the so-called Merchants of Truth, which is written by a former editor of the New York Times, that they're doing self-congratulations for their coverage, when in fact their coverage is lies and censorship. So when you see the Jose Vega intervention where he stands up and calls them out for basically the stories that I'm presenting today, 15 million people have viewed Jose's intervention. So if you think you're alone, you're not. More and more people are coming to realize that we're victims of propaganda and brainwashing. The question is, can you demonstrate the courage that Jose did to stand up in public and call these liars out? That's what's required now. A population which refuses to submit to the corrupt dishonesty of the so-called establishment. And by so-called establishment, I mean the people who control both political parties in the United States, most of the political parties in Europe, control the media, and control the corporate cartels that are wallowing in debt and are forcing you to underwrite their bailouts. So join us tomorrow. Thanks for being with us this week. Spread our videos, sign up, become a part of our organization, and help us defeat these criminals. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.